Hi everybody, this is Richard Sleigh, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the Blues Harmonica Summit that I'm going to be doing November 11th with Ronnie Schellest and Dennis Grunling. And I'm going to be talking about pentatonic scales and more specifically minor pentatonic scales. And if you want to learn to really get fluent in the language of blues, it would make a lot of sense to woodshed a lot on the blues scale and get really, really comfortable with it. Here is the blues scale in second position on an A, key of A harmonica. Now, the thing about playing that scale in second position is it takes a lot of precision to get the bends to work convincingly, especially the second note in that scale. So if you're just starting to work on your blues improvisation, learning a new scale and also working on your bending technique at the same time can be a lot to try to keep together. And the other thing about the second position is that it's mostly a major position. That's a major chord. That's a major chord. And so if you're playing a blues scale against it, which is much more of a minor key scale, you've got all of these built-in chords that are major, and you've got the scale that you're working on. So you've got two different gravitational fields working on you at the same time. You've got your major scale, which has a huge gravitational pull because that's what we all grew up with. It's the, do, a deer, a female deer. We've got that in our heads so deep that it has a very, very strong pull. Whereas the blues scale, for most of us, is something that is not as much home as the major scale because we just haven't spent as much time there. So how do you get started on this scale and get it in your head and start to improvise with it without having to struggle with all these other problems of bending mostly? And my answer to that is to play in a position that gives you the minor pentatonic scale, which is a 5-note scale, one scale degree away from the blues scale. I'm going to play this in this key of C harmonica, the E minor. So those are all the notes that you have available to you without bending any notes. This gives you a lot of combinations that you can work with that all work together well. I did some math on this, or I had a friend help me with this. And so let me look at my notes here. Here's the deal. If you work with this 5-note scale to learn your vocabulary for improvisation, and let's say if you just pick a random, like a 7-note riff, how many 7-note riffs can you construct from a 5-note scale? It'd be 5 times 5 times, 5 to the 7th power. would give you 78,125 possible combinations. Now, most of those are, they're all going to sound okay. They're all going to work with a minor blues. They're all going to sound more bluesy than if you're playing major scale combinations. But anyhow, that's so you have a lot to work with there, and you could take a handful of those and get really, really good at them, and you'd be much more fluent at playing blues than if you took the other extreme, which is actually the way most people learn blues, is they're starting on this part of the harmonica, and they've got all these major scale notes. And they're adding more notes. And now you're taking a 7-note scale and adding notes to it. And if you took that to its extreme, it would be a chromatic scale, or 12 notes. And if you created 7-note riffs from 12-note scales, then now the combinations you have, possible combinations, are 35,831,808. And a lot of them are going to be really bad combinations because you're going to be using all these crazy notes that don't sound like blues. So less is more. And my proposal is to learn this scale on this, in this case it'd be E minor on a C harmonica, and woodshed in that scale for a while until you feel really comfortable with it, and then start playing in second position. Like in this case, you could play these notes in the C harp, and then start finding them on your A harp in second position. Because now you've got them in your head. And getting them in your head and being able to work with them is a big part of becoming fluent. Woo! The harmonica is dancing. Okay. So let me give you an example here. I'm going to play a minor key, E minor, basically help me changes. And I'm going to use this scale on the C harmonica with no bent notes. And you tell me if it sounds bluesy. Okay, I'd managed to do that with only one bent note. So what you're doing with this is it gives you a way to woodshed that limits your vocabulary, so you're feeding your subconscious mind with nothing but high quality information, stuff that all works. And it eliminates a lot of the trial and error that you would have if you're trying to sort out improvising in second position and having to deliberately avoid all of those major scale notes, or you just have so many more combinations. So if I'm playing in second position on this A harp in E minor, you got those built-in major notes that don't really sound right unless you're working it out very carefully. So anyhow, that's how I'm going to approach teaching these scales, is to start with this one scale, no bent notes, and use it as a way to embed a really, really powerful pathway deep into your subconscious mind, so that it's there for you to tap into when you create a solo. The process is getting the mental models, and the process is also being able to create these variations spontaneously, which is much easier to do if you're using a small vocabulary that all works, as opposed to a large vocabulary in which there are many bad choices.